After taking care of my paralyzed husband for 3 years, just 2 months after his miraculous recovery, he asked me for a divorce. It turned out his childhood sweetheart, Jessica, had returned. I then realized that his being with me from the start had been a conspiracy. After the divorce, I was done holding back. That morning, I woke up feeling content. In the past, I would always snuggle into David's arms, sleeping until my grogginess faded, before finally getting up lazily. But today, his side was empty. David wasn't in bed. Sleepy-eyed, I looked around and saw David standing by the window, a lit cigarette held between his fingers. I got up lazily and leaned towards him as if to cuddle, but David moved aside, and I stumbled, nearly falling. I looked in surprise at David, who had quit smoking for me. His sharply sculpted, cold face forced out a few words. "Sarah Miller, let's get a divorce." My heart instantly felt like a stone dropping into my stomach. I couldn't believe the man who had been intimate with me in bed just last night was now calmly uttering those words. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. "You're sleepwalking, right? You said the wrong thing, right?" I pleaded in a nearly begging tone with the man I had loved for 13 years. "Are you crazy?" "I said divorce," David roared loudly. It was the first time I'd heard him so angry, and I was frozen on the spot. Because he had told me he reserved all his tenderness just for me, I had finally, with all my heart, reached the heart of the guy of my dreams. We even got married, and it felt like that was the sum total of my achievements before I turned 26. That achievement shattered into a million pieces with his roar. Leaning against the floor-to-ceiling window, I slowly sank to the floor. Everything happened so suddenly, so unexpectedly. I simply couldn't transition from the tenderness of last night to this morning's absolute icy indifference. I felt like a fragile piece of paper in a storm, soaked through and through, my body seemingly ripped to shreds. "The divorce papers are on the table. Sign them quickly." There's a bank card on the table. It's my compensation for the divorce. And don't even think about fighting this in court. My prenuptial agreement was drafted and notarized long ago. This compensation is all you're getting. You're not eyeing the company's money, are you? It all belongs to my dad. I just draw a salary. I've gone above and beyond for you. You couldn't earn the amount I'm giving you for these 3 years of compensation in a lifetime. I truly couldn't understand how those handsome features could utter such harsh and cutting words. He fired off words like firecrackers, leaving me breathless. Gone above and beyond. What a cruel irony. 3 years ago, David had a sudden car accident and was declared permanently paralyzed by the doctors. And his childhood sweetheart, Jessica, suddenly disappeared. I made inquiries everywhere and finally found David in a hospital bed. He no longer had the spirited pride he'd shown in school. In his hospital bed, his body was wrapped up tight like a mummy in plaster and gauze. Although David's physical condition improved slightly, his temper became exceptionally volatile. He would smash things and lose his temper at the slightest provocation. But surprisingly, he was incredibly patient with me. Only when I was around would he not become frantic in rage. So Aunt Eleanor found me privately, hoping I could take care of David. I stammered, "Doesn't David have a girlfriend? I just came to check on my friend." "Don't even mention that, Jessica, that jinx. After my David became paralyzed, that woman never showed up again." Aunt Eleanor's chest was heaving with anger. "Don't I know you, Sarah? Who can't see that you like my David? Auntie supports you too." With the supper tea of my future mother-in-law, I shyly nodded. Who wouldn't want a chance to get closer to the guy of their dreams? Who could refuse? Besides, he had been in my heart for 10 years. He was my heart's desire. I vaguely remembered middle school. He had curly hair and exquisite features. Standing out in the campus English speech contest, gesturing on stage, in an era when even memorizing vocabulary was difficult for us, he was the Prince Charming in the hearts of countless girls, and I was no exception. What was even more precious was when the school organized a spring trip. I accidentally stepped on a nail, and he insisted on carrying me down the mountain to the hospital. The beads of sweat on his face were an image of love forever etched in my heart. Now, with time's cycle and roles reversed, how could I possibly disagree? With my tireless care, through countless days and nights over more than 2 years. Just 2 months after he could walk again, he dismissed me with a single phrase, "I've gone above and beyond for you." Did I take care of you for money? So in his eyes, was I just a slightly more expensive nanny? Is that why he could say something like "I've gone above and beyond for you" to me? In that instant, I was overwhelmed with sadness, but not a single tear would fall. This wasn't just the collapse of my faith and love, it was the utmost insult and degradation. Well, who is this? Still trying to play the poor thing in front of David? Suddenly, a sweet, affected voice reached my ears. I struggled to lift my head. It was Jessica. I was stunned. She was back after 3 years of not seeing her. Suddenly, fueled by an unknown burst of energy, I scrambled up from the floor and yelled, "Get out!" Oh dear, David, look. Is this the gentle and considerate wife you told me about? She's scaring me. Besides, isn't this David's house? How can you tell me to leave? David turned and looked at me. Jessie. CA is my guest. I always thought you were gentle and considerate, but I didn't expect you to be so disgraceful. David's words were like a thorn stuck deep in my throat. I was in too much pain to speak. David, don't be angry. It's okay if I suffer a little injustice. The most important thing now is to get the divorce done quickly and get rid of this woman, so you can marry me properly and with dignity. It was only through her words that I understood. The reason David was divorcing me was because Jessica had returned. Huh? Marry you? Dream on. Who said I'm getting a divorce? Perhaps it was a surge of defiance, but I suddenly had the urge not to let her win. What's wrong? You think 10 million is too little? Fine, I'll give you another 5 million as compensation. Isn't it just about the money? Maplewood Industries isn't short on that kind of cash. Jessica, dropping the sweet act, once again threw stones at my heart, equating my love with money. Once again, she freely insulted my love. But I was now surprisingly calm. 5 million? Did you have to beg your parents for it? Took a lot of convincing, didn't it? Or did your parents spend 5 million just to get rid of me? I'm truly curious, what kind of upbringing teaches someone to throw money around just to become a mistress? Or did you just come here to gloat and show off? Humph. David, look at this woman. How spiteful and venomous. Jessica, acting like a little bird, tugged at David's arm and swayed. Who says Jessica is a mistress? She and I have been childhood sweethearts for years. I'm not wasting any more words on you. Sign the papers, take the money, and leave. David roared impatiently. Watching them cling to each other like that made me sick. So, you were hooking up with Jessica the whole time we were married? Should I teach you two a lesson about the law? I am the one you're legally married to. I am the legitimate wife recognized by the law. If she's not the mistress, who is? I'm not signing. I'm not getting a divorce. Let's see how arrogant you, the mistress, can be now, and how you'll ever marry into David's family. My heart hardened, and I turned my attack directly on them both. Mistress? Who are you calling a mistress? Looks like you won't give up until you hit a wall. Do you even know how David got into that car accident? Jessica stormed towards me. I was bewildered. Wasn't David's accident just an accident caused by drowsy driving? Jessica, don't say anything. David, you're not going to tell her even now? David was speechless for a moment, which amounted to tacit consent. I didn't want to say anything, but since you insist on knowing the truth, fine, I'll tell you. You should know David has a red Ferrari. We were making out while driving, going too fast. David lost focus, and that's when we crashed into Bayview Bridge. David was paralyzed, I was in a coma, and I was sent abroad for treatment. While I was recovering overseas, you suddenly inserted yourself into our relationship. As she spoke, she thrust photos and chat logs from that time in front of me. Looking at those nude photos and explicit flirtatious messages, I trembled all over. What I couldn't accept was the idea that I was the one who had intruded on their relationship. All sense of defiance and hatred vanished. In an instant, I fell into an ice pit, stumbling out of the villa's front door. Under the blazing sun, all I saw was a dim, hazy world. Back home, I lay there like a zombie, neither eating nor drinking. My parents saw me like this and were very worried. They asked anxiously, but I said nothing. 3 days later, I managed to drink just a little oatmeal. It seemed I had gained a little strength. In my heart, I had always believed David's accident was unintentional and that Jessica had abandoned him. And Aunt Eleanor had worked on me, trying to convince me. How, in an instant, had I become the third party who intervened in their relationship? I couldn't accept it. I tried to calm down and slowly started to unravel the sequence of events. Suddenly, I seemed to notice something off. If what Jessica said was true, I found David 4 months after the accident, and Jessica's injuries were less severe than David's. Besides, I only decided to take care of David 6 months after the accident. In those 6 months, Jessica should have been fully conscious and able to contact David. Furthermore, how could a couple deeply in love, involved in the same accident, completely ignore the other person? For me to take care of David, Aunt Eleanor put in a lot of effort, praised me often, and worked on persuading me. Given the relationship between the David family and the Jessica family, how could they not know each other's situation? After all, they were business partners. What about David? Why would he accept my love? David's silence felt more like an endorsement of Jessica. If all this was true, then who was lying? I found the accident report from that year. It was true they were both in the car during the accident, but I was not the third party. The accident was real, and her injuries were real. And it was true that Jessica had abandoned David. News like that couldn't be hidden. As soon as David was slightly better, he frantically asked people everywhere to find out where Jessica was, but she never responded. Later, she simply blocked David. This was the main reason David became so volatile and prone to rages once he was physically better. Yet now, David knew all of this perfectly well, but he still chose to tacitly agree with Jessica's words. Jessica's words were a stab in the heart. And David's silence was deafening. I had witnessed their most affectionate moments, silently protecting that pure love in my heart. For 13 years, I had poured all my energy and heart into loving him completely. How could he bear to treat me this way? With his indulgence, in an instant, I was torn apart by Jessica. Jessica returned, and so I had to be divorced. Jessica lied, a lie that was a fatal blow to me, and he chose silence. Only now did my tears finally begin to fall, one by one. The love I thought I was protecting, the guy of my dreams for my entire life. I didn't realize that the moment that moonlight spilled onto the ground, it would be filled with sorrow. My hands trembling, I touched my lower abdomen. Baby, I'm sorry. I used to eagerly anticipate your arrival. I had originally planned to tell him this news at David's birthday party 2 months from now. But now, there's no need. Everything has changed. I can't let you be born into a single-parent family, nor can I let you be born without a father. There was a time when, to conceive, I visited famous doctors, underwent all sorts of tests, and took medication. I secretly took David's semen sample for testing and only then learned that David had partial fertility issues, making conception difficult, with only a 1% chance. So when I found out I was pregnant with David's child, in that moment, I saw you as a gift from heaven. A reward for our love. But now, 13 years of love had instantly turned into hatred. Why should I be the only one to suffer? How much hardship did I endure to get pregnant? How much effort did I put into loving you? Why should I have to bear all of this? No, I'll make him feel the pain too. Having thought it all through, I resolutely lay down on the operating table. I was curious to see how David would react when he received his semen sample for testing results and my abortion procedure record. As expected. The day after I sent the shipping label, David came to my house early in the morning, yelling and shouting outside my door. But from the moment I lay on the operating table, moment the baby was aborted, 13 years of love had already died within me. The shouting outside was deafening. You're lying to me, aren't you? The baby is still there, right? You loved me for 13 years, how can you be so heartless? I don't believe it, I don't believe it. David pounded furiously on my door with both fists. So heartless? Hearing those words come from him, I found it rather amusing. You've seen the report and the procedure record. Why question it? With the David family's financial power, it shouldn't be hard to go to the hospital and confirm directly with the doctor, right? From behind the door, I was calm and indifferent. Hearing such heartless words come from him, the only bit of guilt I felt for not sharing the news of the pregnancy with him immediately vanished into thin air. This makes you sad? This hurts now? It's right that it hurts, because this is the price for playing with feelings. There's a saying I think is very true: apologies and deep affection that come too late are cheaper than dirt. A woman's heart is truly the most venomous. You would even use an unborn baby for revenge. You have a viper's heart. Bang! A heavy blow slammed against the door. Hearing him say these things, I let out a cold scoff. But who brought all of this upon me? Who caused all of this? What do you mean? Do you expect me to forget that even after we got married, you were flirting explicitly and intimately with Jessica in chat logs? Or do you expect me to still have the baby after we divorce, so Jessica can marry you? Or maybe not divorce, and have the baby? You really want a life with no regrets, don't you? You'd have your child, and your Jessica would be back. What about me? Was I just a tool? Well, excuse me, but even tools can fight back. My parents had already called the police. Before long, the police arrived, and David was taken away. Seeing his eyes and the blood on his hands as he left, I felt a sense of vengeful satisfaction. This incident caused a big stir. Not only did my parents find out the whole story, but even the neighbors and police were alarmed. My parents insisted I get a divorce. Nonsense. Is Director Miller's daughter from the prestigious SEC Audit Division going to have trouble finding a husband? Dad's mustache twitching made me smile. Yes, Dad always wanted me to take over his position. At the time, because of David, I went against Dad and gave up many opportunities for internal selection and promotion training at the SEC Audit Division. Now, Dad is getting old and is not far from retirement. I think even though he doesn't say it, he still wants me to succeed him and become a key member of the core team at the division. Love is gone now, so I should at least grab onto bread. With my parents paving the way, I began preparing for the next quarter's internal selection exams. It truly was what goes around comes around. When David wanted a divorce, I refused and fled the villa. Now I want a divorce, and David is the one refusing. I really don't know what he's holding on to. I couldn't help but chuckle. Why are people so perverse? They don't cherish things when they have them, but cling desperately when they're gone. It's truly laughable. To try and mend love that's been trampled and dignity that's been insulted. Don't they feel cheap doing that? Later I found out he still thought the baby was a lie to trick him. He wasn't giving up hope. 4 months later, I met him once, and seeing my flat lower abdomen, he agreed to the divorce cleanly. I thought his grand display of apology and repentance was for me. It turned out it was for the baby I was supposedly carrying. Of course, I didn't forget to take back the 10 million bank card. It was the compensation I deserved. Why should I let him off easy for the sake of some pointless pride? 6 months later, after the selection exam and multiple rounds of screening, I finally achieved my wish and entered the core team at the SEC Audit Division, where I could participate in some cases. I was genuinely happy. When I first graduated, I had always wanted to join a core functional department. Growing up under my parents' influence, I was very interested in the securities industry. The reason I gave up and was marginalized at the division was entirely because of David. Once that obstacle was gone, I could naturally embark on my own life easily. I thought David, Jessica, and I would never cross paths again in this life. I didn't expect that when a file landed on my desk, I would realize the seriousness of the situation. It was a listing review file for Maplewood Industries. Maplewood Industries? My eyes narrowed. Wasn't this Jessica's family business? They were going public? Before, both David and Aunt Eleanor had constantly complained about Maplewood Industries' consecutive years of losses, demanding to withdraw their investment and causing big arguments at home. Now, not only did their reports show consecutive years of profit, but they also had consecutive years of capital increase. With my sharp intuition, I suddenly felt that things weren't simple. I quickly told Dad about this. Through our discreet investigation, Dad and I uncovered an even more shocking secret. Not only had Maplewood Industries falsified financial statements and reported fake profits, but even Summit Enterprises, a major shareholder, had gone public through shady dealings over 2 years ago. The key person who facilitated this was the head of the audit department, my superior, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson graduated from the same university as my dad. He was Dad's junior. I then remembered that less than a month after I started taking care of David, Aunt Eleanor had visited my dad. It turned out that Aunt Eleanor had approached Dad about Summit Enterprises' IPO issue, but Dad had sternly refused her. It seems they found a proxy. The matter was too big and involved many people at the division, so we compiled the materials and reported it to our superiors. As a result, the Oversight Committee directly joined our work group, and Maplewood Industries' IPO was halted. Summit Enterprises' listing was suspended, and an investigation process was initiated. Further action would be taken pending the investigation results. Maplewood Industries' case involved so many people that it was like pulling up a radish and bringing out a whole lot of mud. Naturally, Aunt Eleanor couldn't sit still. It was the first time I had seen her since the day David told me he wanted a divorce. Aunt Eleanor, carrying expensive gifts, was waiting by the elevator. "Please, I beg you, save our family, save us, save David." As she spoke, she instantly burst into tears. I didn't say anything, just watched her. Seeing my cold face, still unmoved, Aunt Eleanor finally played her last card, David and my relationship. Invoking the bond of marriage, she pleaded, "For David's sake, please, save him." A bond? I don't know how she could say something like that. I loved him deeply for 13 years. He got into a car accident with Jessica while flirting and seeking thrills, became paralyzed. I took care of him for 3 years until he recovered. Jessica came back, and I was swept out the door. This is what she calls a bond? Aunt Eleanor was so choked up by my words she couldn't say anything. Her head, usually held high like a lady's, finally bowed. "You were the one who persuaded David to accept me, so you could get close to Mr. Thompson through me, all for the sake of Summit Enterprises going public, right? I just wanted to confirm this one thing now. You're not going to say it, are you? If you don't say it, I'm leaving." I gave her my ultimatum. "Sarah!" Aunt Eleanor grabbed me and nodded. Indeed, just as I suspected. David was with me simply to find someone to take care of him and a stepping stone that would facilitate Summit Enterprises going public. It turned out the love I thought I had from the beginning was filled with lies, deception, and conspiracy. David had never loved me at all. I was merely a pawn in their scheme to achieve their goals. Once the pawn had no more use, they would sacrifice it without hesitation. They didn't even bother to see me. If not for this matter, I probably wouldn't have even seen Aunt Eleanor, would I? I returned all the gifts. I wasn't Mr. Thompson. The phone rang. The phone rang urgently. "Sarah, what in the world are you doing? Why are you being so ruthless? Do you know that David has been drinking so much he's in the hospital throwing up blood?" Mark's accusatory voice came from the other end of the line. Mark was David's childhood friend. If this were before, I would have been scared out of my wits. If even the slightest thing happened to David, I would be more anxious than about my own affairs. But not anymore. "Do you know that David and I are divorced?" Mark stammered, and after a long pause, managed to force out a sentence. "But you can't report them. David is already living a life worse than death. How can you be so cruel? You were husband and wife, weren't you? You don't want him to die, right?" Hearing Mark's words, I was so angry I laughed. I hung up the phone immediately, then deleted and blocked all of Mark's contact information. Now, what does David's life or death have to do with me? The wrong things you did I, Sarah Miller, ask you to do them? What awaits them is naturally the judgment of the state and the law. When I was at my lowest, did you, Mark, ever come to see me even once, or offer a single word of comfort? This moral blackmail. I see no need to say another word to him. The investigation continued. Since I was The one who first discovered the clues in both cases. The oversight committee, in an unprecedented move, allowed me to join the work group. This kind of opportunity was rare, so naturally, I buried myself in hard work. I often worked overtime late into the night. Just after getting off work, I collided with someone reeking of alcohol and with red hair. He gripped my hands tightly. His bloodshot eyes were scarlet, and his face was covered in stubble, making me feel incredibly flustered. "Sarah Miller, I beg you, let me go, let Jessica go, please." Only then did I focus and see that the person in front of me was David. As he finished speaking, he knelt down before me. Tears and snot streamed down his face. I was instantly shocked. I had never seen David like this before. In the past, he was noble and elegant, with exquisite features, dressed stylishly, walking with a confident stride, every inch the domineering CEO. But now, he looked nothing like a CEO. Several colleagues from the oversight committee quickly worked together to pull David away. "Please, please, save me, save Jessica. I'll be your slave, forever indebted to you." David, using his last ounce of strength, tore my skirt. I simply watched his performance as best I could. Thinking back on his self-important demeanor, I suddenly felt disgusted. What's the point, David? I know the truth. You were with me because you needed something, and you're not with me now because you need something else. Jessica came back, and you're with her because you need something. And she's with you because she needs something, isn't that right? Raising my voice, I turned and spoke to Jessica, who was standing around the corner. She thought I hadn't noticed her, but in fact, I spotted her the moment she peeked out. Jessica stammered as she walked over and called out, "Sarah!" This surprised me. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. I looked at her call delay and said nothing. "Sarah, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I was wrong, I shouldn't have made you angry. I was the one who abandoned David back then. I was the intruder in your marriage. I'm willing to compensate you with everything I have. I'll agree to any demand you make. I'll disappear from your sight immediately if you want me to. David, he's yours. Aunt Eleanor and David made me do all of this. Please, let me go, let Maplewood go, please." Jessica cried, tears streaming down her face. "Jessica, when the hell did I make you do any of that? When I was paralyzed, you abandoned me. Did I make you do that? Now you suddenly come back. Did I make you do that?" David's eyes flashed fiercely, completely losing his former composure. "Without your mother's promise to transfer shares and increase capital, and her promise that Maplewood Industries would definitely go public? Without your mother constantly working on persuading me, would I have married you? You, a man with fertility issues. What the hell are you talking about? Who was behind Maplewood Industries' IPO? Wasn't it your parents? How can you try to wash your hands of it?" Listening to them fighting like cats and dogs, I actually felt a sense of relief. As my investigation had shown, neither of them was easy to deal with. They were just birds of a feather, driven solely by self-interest. But what use were these apologies now? I couldn't possibly forgive what you did to me. As for the company's listing fraud, it wasn't something that could be covered up by my forgiveness or your apology. If apologies worked, would the law of the land just be there for show? I was now calm as an iceberg, a calmness that had seeped out from the ashes of that dead relationship. Suddenly, there was a deathly silence, and David's face contorted. "Look, it's all because of you, all because of you. Sarah Miller, you vicious woman, ha 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 ha. Now you have what you wanted, you can. Ow, the truth, but what can you do to me? Didn't you still take care of me for 3 years and were played by me for 3 years? Ha 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 ha." David laughed hysterically. "So, everything has its cause and effect. Aren't you already tasting the consequences now?" David's laughter stopped abruptly. I smiled slightly. "Don't dwell on it too much. I've long since moved on. Having become indifferent to that relationship, and seeing the person in front of me clearly, what was the point of him proclaiming all this to me?" My eyes were as cold as ice. David was just a nobody now. As for Jessica, no snowflake in an avalanche is innocent. The oversight committee was very efficient, and the results came out quickly. Maplewood Industries' IPO review was rejected, the Judicial Department intervened, and Jessica's family was summoned. As for Summit Enterprises, it was delisted due to fraudulent issuance, and David's family was criminally charged. 8 months later, David and Jessica were sent to prison. Aunt Eleanor was sentenced for bribing state officials, and David's dad was sentenced for fraudulent listing and issuing stocks. All personnel at the division involved in the case were also convicted and sentenced. That afternoon, at the coffee shop downstairs, I ordered a coffee and enjoyed a rare moment of peace. "Sarah, well done." I turned my head and saw Dad's kind gaze as he handed me a file. "What is it?" So mysterious. It was rare to see Dad like this during work hours. Usually, he was quite stern. I opened it curiously. It turned out to be an olive branch from the Oversight Committee, inviting me for advanced study. I gasped in surprise, unable to believe it was real, until I saw the official seal and pinched my thigh to make sure. Under the umbrella outside the coffee shop, a cappuccino sat waiting. Its enticing aroma drifted into my nose with the breeze. I took a deep breath and savored it, my eyes sparkling with a smile. "Dad, want a cappuccino?"